So my name is Natasha, and today I'm welcoming another guest into my Liminal World project, and I'm very pleased to share the screen with another Natasha. Today with me is Natasha Pashchenko, and I'm meeting her here in Victoria, in BC. But I want to say that I was impressed with the process of preparation for our video, because I happened to realize that in front of me is a person who came from somewhat different circumstances, went through completely different situations in life, but became someone that I can say that I can feel related to, very related to. We share a lot of things, like we're both immigrants, we're coming from Slavic countries, we are into arts, but the thing that I was the most attached to her, it's her love for teaching. So I hope we will today talk more about the process of learning and teaching, which is one of my favorite topics. So welcome Natasha to the Liminal World.
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. I'm quite flattered that you picked me for your interview, and I'm excited about it.
In order to come to this moment, which is 2021, I want to go back in time. And if you would love to share some moments, I would love to hear some moments of your early life.
Sure. Well, I was born in mid-80s in a small town called, in Russian, Elektrostal. In English, quite literally translated, electro steel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a funny name because in our town we have a steel producing factory called
Mm-hmm.
Electro Steel,
Mm-hmm.
which was used widely in the war. And when I was growing up, it was producing things like irons and strollers and refrigerators
Mm-hmm.
instead of war
Mm-hmm.
weapons, etc. And
I want to hear moments of your early life. Like, did you have siblings? And what was like to be a kid in 80s in Russia or Soviet Union? It was a
well,
Soviet Union back then.
yes, it was the Soviet Union back then. I am an only child. I grew up surrounded by ultimate care and love from my, excuse me, mom and grandma.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very sheltered. I was provided for. I didn't have to really work for anything. Even in my teens, I didn't know what making money was.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was provided for me. Just like
Mm-hmm.
any average child, I went to kindergarten and then I went to school and I graduated and I went straight to university when I was 16 and I
What did you
spent
study? What did you study in Russia?
um, in university I studied foreign languages at the Moscow State Pedagogical University
Mm-hmm.
and I loved it. I
You
loved
love.
every minute of that program, but I didn't finish it because we moved to Canada.
I want to ask you if that immigration was related with what was actually happening in your country during the 90s, because we share that moment in history. My country was pretty stable when I was growing up, as you did, but in 90s there was a lot of immigration from my country, and I'm assuming that Russia went through the same process. So was it related, your immigration to Canada, was it related to the
In a
situation?
way, yes, in a way it was. It was initiated by my mom, of course, because I was not a mature, conscious being at the time. And when at the moment when we immigrated in 2003, things weren't horrible in Russia, but they were pretty bad for my mom during early 90s, which is
Mhm.
when quite a few of our relatives immigrated.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
followed them almost 10 years later.
Mhm.
So during the early 90s, I remember that my mom had real trouble finding work. She was laid off from her research institute, where she applied her profession, which was mechanical engineering. Can you believe that?
I can. My dad is a mechanical engineer, so and she was laid off. That's unbelievable, but everything else is.
I know that's something so complex I could never comprehend.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah.
Anyway, she was laid off when I think I was in grade 1 then, grade 1 or grade 2, and I remember she had a string of random jobs, which included knitting, embroidery, selling jackets at a metro station, really random things just to help make money for the family. My grandmother also worked until the very last moment. My grandma was an architectural engineer, like a building engineer, and she was extremely dedicated. So I remember both my mom and grandma would be at work when I came home, and I had to call them and tell them that I got home from school and heat up my dinner and do my homework, and then they would both come home and we would sit on our sofa in front of the TV, watch soap operas from Mexico and Brazil. My mom would be knitting, always knitting something, and we'd be eating semichki, sunflower seeds.
Yeah.
So that's imprinted in my memory forever and ever.
I was very interested in the story of your grandma because she had a great role in your life. So can you share a few moments? Because she in a sense, she actually affected you a lot, everything she did and what she taught you. So I want to, if you can share some
Yes,
things,
I
I would
would
love.
love to. I would love to. Well, I think my grandma is a very complex personality. Um, Extremely caring, extremely loving, and also very strict. She used to be very strict because essentially she raised my mom alone and then she raised me. So she raised both of us in a similar way, really. And I like to say that she was the father of the family. And I can tell now, looking back, that she had so much responsibility for both our lives. She thought her sole duty was to help us grow up, help us become strong people. And that's why she was sometimes overly strict. And of course, I didn't like that. But now I'm quite grateful because honestly, I don't know what kind of person I would have grown up to be without that.
Yes,
And I think my resilience and work ethic are greatly due to her upbringing. She's an extremely honest person, extremely hardworking. She's a protector, a defender. I remember very clearly when I was practicing piano and we had neighbors across the wall who absolutely hated it. So they would bang on our door and yell obscenities in my grandma's face, and she yelled right back at them. And she always won.
Of course.
And I said, Grandma, how do you do it? I could never do that. And she said, you need to be able to stand up for yourself and yell back. It's a Russian way of standing up for yourself.
Yes, but that's the only way. Sometimes it's the only way in some circumstances and in some environments is the only way. Yes, I was impressed with her character. The more you spoke about her, I could imagine her and her integrity and determination, and she's being a protector and provider and comfort zone. So she's a very powerful woman. So you came to Canada 2003, December, you said. And what was your experience of Canada?
Well, I had been to Canada one time before we immigrated. I think it was 2001. I was sent by myself for a visit. to visit our relatives in Richmond. And I thought it was paradise, honestly. My mind was blown by Vancouver and Richmond and how neat and beautiful everything was, and the sky and the sea and the mountains. I mean, I grew up in a swamp city, pretty much, which was entirely flat or no mountains. And my mind was completely blown. And I thought, yeah, I want to live here. Life here would be plain and magical. Of course, I was taken to the most beautiful places. The Vancouver Aquarium, the beach, Mineral Park in Richmond is beautiful.
Probably Whistler, or
I can't remember if
somewhere north.
Whistler, but I was definitely taken places where I saw such beauty, Stanley Park, and such abundance of everything. I mean, North America always shocked me with abundance. How many varieties there are of candy. I mean, what does a teenager want? Candy, I guess.
But what was your real experience now when you were not a visitor or tourist? You landed and you had to find your way. Well, how did you experience Canada then?
It was quite a culture shock, because I had fantasized about living in a house, because I'd never lived in a house before. I grew up in an apartment, a one-bedroom apartment, 3 people in a one-bedroom apartment. And I was like, yes, finally, we're going to have a house with a V-shaped roof. That was my sick fantasy. And then we come and we have this little apartment on the ground floor, also 1 bedroom, and I didn't have my own room. It was in a nice area, but it wasn't downtown, and it wasn't the best quality dwelling. I remember we were flooded a few times from the laundry room across the wall, and I had to find a job right away. That was a shocker. The first job I got was at a warehouse as an order picker. It was an interesting minimal wage job with a lot of different people from different countries. That was my first experience with immigrants from all over, from India, from the Philippines, from Ukraine, from Fiji, from Africa, all over really. And it was definitely an amazing experience for me, because I was fascinated. So many different cultures, so many different languages. I tried to learn a word from every language.
So you like that? You like being exposed to different people and different cultures and customs?
I enjoyed that, especially because in Russia we didn't have it. In Russia, if we wanted to be exposed, we had to procure tapes, because there was really not so much internet. It was dial-up internet by card. I'd buy a $5 card or whatever, and you have
I remember those times. I remember those times too.
So we would go to the foreign languages library in Moscow and be all excited about it, because you needed a special pass, and then you could sign out a special tape and listen to it.
But you see, you were excited as I was, but there is a lot of immigrants who consider that as a shock. They're first time coming out of their own society, and they feel, a bit resistance.
It was a shock. It was still a shock. I mean, there's so many. I was so stimulated from every possible direction that I'm sure I had conflicted feelings. I remember that the new things were interesting, new people were interesting. At the same time, I felt like everything is slightly wrong or slightly off, because it's not the way of life I'm used to, and the society works differently. And I remember when I did a test at an employment agency to get a job, to see what job I qualify for, and my test scores were through the roof. And I was told, well, your test scores are amazing, but we can't give you a job because you don't have Canadian work experience. And I said, well, how am I supposed to get it if you won't give it to me?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the catch-22.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was definitely new to me, that process.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I mean, working that job was fine. I enjoyed it, kept me in shape because you had to keep running all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And bonuses were quantity based, so the more
Mm-hmm.
orders you picked, the more money you got, pretty
Mm-hmm.
much, on top of your minimal wage.
Mm-hmm.
So that kept us all running, and some of us cheating.
If it's not a secret, can you tell me how did you spend your first salary?
Not a secret, of course. I saved up for quite a few months and
Mhm.
I bought a digital piano. This
Ooh,
Yamaha over there, you probably can't see it. It's a
yes.
Yamaha Clavinova 150. And I remember spending a lot of time at Tom Lee music
Mhm.
store in Richmond trying different digital pianos, and that one was my favorite. And it was $3,200. That's the most expensive thing I have ever owned
Mm,
up until I bought my guitar over there, which was more expensive than that.
mm. But there is a reason why you actually choose to put money into piano or into music. And we are coming to our actually topic, which is your profession. So I felt related to you when you mentioned how you had through your life, early life, a lot of interests and you pursue them and you find yourself doing all of them pretty good, but you couldn't find that one thing that you can, you know, grab and own and be completely, immersed in that one profession. And today you are a music teacher, which is interesting because music was always part of you, always somewhere around you since an early childhood. So I want to talk about music and I want to talk about its place in your life. Come on.
Sure, it's a really long story, actually. Is it okay if I start from from
Yes,
early childhood? Yeah.
yes.
Well, we had a piano in our apartment. It was my mom's piano. My mom used to study piano. She went to the public music school when she was a child, and she did her 7 grades of music school. So she was actually pretty good. But after graduating it, she didn't really play it at
Mhm,
all. So I just sat in the house like a piece of furniture, and it had bookshelves on it, which was a very common thing in Russia to
mhm,
have bookshelves and other things on your piano piled up.
mhm, mhm,
And I remember just coming to the piano and poking with one finger here and there, and there were always records playing in the house. We had a record player, and I remember the Nutcracker. I
mhm,
listened a lot to the Nutcracker. I can't remember other pieces. There were probably children's fairy tales and cartoon voiceovers you could listen to with different songs. But the Nutcracker really cut into my brain, and I remember hiding under the blanket when it was the Rat King um, section. It was really disturbing music as I felt it, so I would
mhm,
hide and listen from under the blanket. And I
mhm.
remember Mozart. I think those two things I remember the most. And I think that's why right now classical music is one of the most natural
Mhm.
styles for me to play and to listen to, probably due to that early influence.
Exposure. Okay. When
Mhm.
did you start playing piano?
I started when I was 11, and for a funny reason, actually. My mom started asking me if I wanted to learn piano when I was 6. And I kept saying, "No, mom, no, I don't wanna. I don't wanna." And I remember I'd always be poking at it, but I said, "I don't want to." And my mom, wanting to be a progressive mom, did not force me. But
Ah.
little did she know. So what she didn't know is that my only reason for not wanting to study piano was thinking that I would have to go on the bus all by myself when I'm 6, 7 to the music school alone on the bus. Can you imagine that?
Yeah. And you didn't want to be alone.
A girl from my class was going on the bus by herself. And I was jealous of her because she went to music school, but I also was really afraid. As you remember, I was a sheltered child.
Yeah.
So I was afraid of the outside world. And basically, that's the only stupid reason.
Why you didn't start with 6, but 11. And why 11? What happened in the meantime?
I realized that playing with one finger isn't very comfortable because I wanted to play songs by ear by pop singers and stuff. I was into this Russian pop singer, Natasha Koroleva, another Natasha. She was very popular at the time. I was a crazy fan. And I remember literally one finger was picking out that melody. And then I thought, there must be more than that. And I said, Mom, can you call Teta Tanya? Teta Tanya is Auntie Tanya.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't really my aunt. She's my mom's friend from school who is a music teacher. She's a piano teacher still, and she was at the time. And my mom said, okay, let's call her, finally.
And you studied piano until the age of 16?
Yeah, for 5 years, and my teacher had crammed the 7 grades of the music school curriculum into 5 years. So I studied at home with her, but I did my exams officially at the college where she worked. And I did attend some classes like solfeggio I attended.
And that was it, like that was the piano in the early age, and suddenly you decided to study foreign languages. So piano was something you did, something which you called comfort zone, or something you went to, but not the thing you decided to study or devote your life to. Am I true?
That is true. When I was 16, my teacher said, okay, you're finishing high school, and so it's best that we stop before you have to graduate so you can focus on your university studies and, your university exams, because you're not going to be a musician. And she said that with all the kindness of her heart, because in Russia, for practical reasons, you don't want to be a musician.
It's survival. It's hard to survive.
Yeah. So I guess she did it because it was her thing from the beginning. I think she knew. And I did it because I wanted to play pieces. And when I was about 14, I started developing a really deep attachment to Chopin. I remember listening obsessively, all the waltzes, all the mazurkas, all the nocturnes, the etudes. It was just the concertos. I was exploding with fascination for Chopin. And so in my last 2 years studying piano, I remember that was the only thing was on my mind from the classical world. I realized suddenly I can read music myself. I know how to read rhythms. I have a good ear, and I just started learning all these things by myself, just plowing through the books. And that was so empowering.
How did you end up playing guitar then?
Oh, I was visiting a friend's house in Richmond, and her mom is a guitar teacher. And I noticed that most of my attention was not on my friend, but on the beautiful sound I heard coming from the kitchen. And so every time I was there was beautiful sound coming from the kitchen. And her mom would be sitting at the kitchen table with some tea and sandwiches and a bunch of sheet music and her guitar and playing this beautiful music. And You know, as educated as I was, I didn't know about classical guitar.
Mm-hmm.
So my first thought was, what's this sound? Where is this amazing sound coming from? And when I saw it was guitar, I could not believe that it was guitar, because for me, guitar was for strumming songs around the fire.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought it was. And with all my music education, I hadn't been exposed to any classical guitar music.
Mm-hmm.
And this is strange because classical guitar is very big in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
So I still, to this day, do not know why. Anyway, I was so taken. I said, I want that. How can I do that? And it was
How
not.
old were you?
I think I was 20.
20. Mm-hmm.
Around there, and I was going to UBC doing my degree in linguistics. I still really loved languages, and I was taken by them. And again, I was mostly taken with the musical aspect of language.
Mm-hmm.
So phonetics and phonology were my two favorite subjects. How sounds are produced, how sounds work in words, and how sounds develop over time. I am just obsessed with that. I was, and it still fascinates me to this day. And so I started taking lessons as a hobby, I think when I was 21, or between 20 and 21. I had purchased a guitar prior to that, and I learned a few chords because all my Russian-speaking friends knew how to play guitar. I felt like I have to fit in, so I got a guitar, a basic Yamaha model that most students get, cheap, $140 or something. And I learned 3 chords and was perfectly fine for all the Russian songs. 3 chords. And we'd go camping and we'd sing. There was a huge community of bard song. I don't know if you are familiar with that term.
No.
It's
What is
basically
a bard?
poetry laid to music. It's very popular in Russia. So the poetry is quite profound. The music is normally quite simple. So it focuses on the poetry. And we had great bards when I was growing up. One of the names is Bulat Akujava, very famous. He had a beautiful voice, and he wrote beautiful philosophical songs. That
I'm going to check that.
Yeah, and he's one of many. And there was a very famous couple, Sergei, Tatiana Nikitiny. Nikitins, and they actually visited Canada quite a few times, and we knew a lot of their songs. So all the Russians were singing all the bard songs together by the fire every year, maybe twice a year, on camping trips. It's a wonderful community, absolutely wonderful.
Today you are a music teacher, guitar teacher in Conservatory of Nanaimo, which is a town on Vancouver Island. But also, what I want to highlight, you are a self-employed music teacher who has or who is running her own studio, Good Music Studio. And I want to talk about that. From somebody who loves music and then end up finding guitar at early 20s, you are today in your 30s as classical guitar teacher, and you have a lot of students, different age. So I wanna talk about that. How did you become a studio owner? What is like to be the one? How are you organizing yourself? Who are your students?
Sure. And again, it's a very long thread. I'll try to move through it as quickly as I can. So I never thought I would be a music teacher. I was working at a press company, a media company in Richmond called Newspaper Direct. Now it's called Press Reader. And I was in the publishing IT department for a few years. I had my own team that I was managing, and I had to deal with technical things. And I was studying classical guitar with my teacher, Galina, in Richmond as a hobby. And at some point I felt, when I was sitting at work, that I was itching to practice. And that feeling just grew and grew and grew and grew. And eventually it pushed out my desire to come to work and do what I do, even though I had a wonderful team. I loved my team and I thought work was fun, but I kept getting this overwhelming desire to drop everything and practice my guitar. And then I thought, if I had one chance to try and go into music, it had to be then. Has to be now. Because I'm getting old, 25 or 26. And my teacher said, well, let's try to apply to a couple programs or a program. And I thought I would want to be a music therapist for some reason. I wanted to help people heal with music. And so I applied to a music therapy program at Capilano College. And then my teacher was helping me prepare for my audition. And I was talking to my friend about this, and she said, what's your backup option? And I said, well, I don't have any. And she says, why not? I said, I don't know. And she said, what about University of Victoria? And I said, oh, but it's in Victoria and I'm in Vancouver. I already immigrated. I don't want to immigrate again. But she had a point. So I asked my teacher about the UVic, and she said that there's a good teacher there. And so I thought, well, it's university. It's way above my level. Who would ever want me? So old, doing a music degree from scratch. But, I applied anyway.
You're a Russian. Now you sound like a Russian.
And I really did not want to go to UBC again because I did my linguistics degree there, and I didn't really like how large it was and how impersonal I thought it was. I just wanted something smaller, so I thought Capilano College would be perfect. Anyway, my UVic audition came before the Capilano audition, so I went on the ferry by myself for the first time, and I did my audition, which I thought went terribly. I never felt worse about a performance. But, I got home in a couple of weeks. I got an acceptance letter from UVic. And so I thought, I'm going to Victoria. And I didn't even do my Capilano audition, and forget music therapy. I'm going to do my classical guitar degree at UVic. And at first I had reservations moving from Vancouver to Victoria. But then, it happened. And on the first day, I walked out of my newly rented apartment in Victoria, and I felt like I was home. The music program lasted for a few years, and I thought that was the best time I ever had studying anything. I loved all my professors. I loved all my subjects, no exception. I loved the crowd. They're all crazy. And I love that. You go to the bathroom, you hear singing. Everyone is singing. That was my world. And
you stayed.
Yeah.
That's the reason why you stayed after you finished. You didn't go back to Vancouver, but choose to stay in Victoria.
Yes, Victoria just felt right. There were a lot of challenges. I had run out of money. I had a student loan, and I still have it for God knows how many years. But it just felt right. It felt like home, and I liked being on my own, a little bit distanced from everyone, so I could keep my head clear.
Yeah. And how did you build your studio? Like from being a student to being an owner, to me, it seems like a huge step.
It kind of happened gradually. I had a few students to help supplement my income when I was a student, and it wasn't very regular. I maybe had, 3 or 4. on and off. They didn't last a very long time, except maybe a couple. And I thought I was going to have a career in performance. For some reason, that was my big, ambitious idea. I remember being taken with classical guitar performers and thinking, I want to do that. That's what I want to express. And so I was practicing like crazy towards that goal. And I thought that's what I wanted to do. More performance, more and more performance. Perfect the skill, perform on stage, get over stage fright. Because I didn't really have much performance experience, even with piano. I wasn't on stage that much. Anyway, my third year, I had a repetitive strain injury, which had uncovered a couple chronic conditions that were quite serious, depressing. So I took a year of playing guitar. And then I went back after a year and finished my degree, played my graduating recital. But I knew that I couldn't be a performer because I couldn't practice for long periods of time because it would hurt. And I had to be very careful with my body. And so I had to, you know, tone down on my ambition to perform. And so teaching kind of happened as a natural outcome because I still wanted to be part of the music world.
You were actually teaching piano and guitar, and you have kids as well as an adults. How do you organize all those classes? And I especially want to talk, please, I want to talk about the approach, different approach you take with the different age groups. Sure. I was impressed with that. So can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not the only teacher who does that. Most music teachers teach all ages, unless you work at a university where you mostly teach late teens and adults.
So you are either a music teacher inside of some institution when there is a program and strict age group, or you are having your own private studio and dealing with all sorts of students.
Yeah, well, mostly I work with private students. I only do one day at the Nanaimo Conservatory, one day a week, and the other 5 days I do at home. And I have a big mix. My student age range is 5 to past 70 years old. And to be honest, I thought I would be teaching adults. That was my idea in my head when I was at UVic. And teaching children came as a bit of a shock. I thought they were just like adults. I'll just teach them the same way.
But that wasn't the case.
Yes, that didn't work very well.
And maybe this is a good time for you to introduce us with Suzuki method.
Definitely.
You're the first one that I've heard from about Suzuki method. Is it a method or approach or?
It's both. It's a method and an approach and a philosophy and a lifestyle and a way.
Let's talk about that, because you're certified Suzuki guitar instructor. And what does that mean?
Well, that means that I took courses in Suzuki pedagogy with a certified instructor. And I'll tell you a little bit about the philosophy and how I found out about it. My teacher, Galina, in Richmond, teaches a lot of children using this method. So she introduced me to it, and she was convincing me for years to certify. And I thought it was very boring because all the kids played the same songs all the time. I thought it was quite annoying. But she had convinced me. And we went together one year to Seattle and did our respective courses. She did, I think, a later level, like a more advanced level, and I did level 1, because there are 10 levels, 10 books in the Suzuki method, and you certify by level as a teacher. So I did my introduction. And I remember feeling very grumpy about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed like a waste of time to me, you know, because I knew better, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment I met our instructor, everything changed because
Mm-hmm.
she gave me such an amazing insight into child psychology. I
Mm-hmm.
probably wouldn't have gotten anywhere. And so at the end of the course, I was so appreciative
Mm-hmm.
that I thought, okay, I want to try that. I want to try. It answered a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Questions like, when you explain something to a child, how do they hear it? And the answer is blah, 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 blah. That's how they hear it.
So what are you supposed to do in that situation?
So you're supposed to speak the language that they speak.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly the language of imagery and not analytical
Mm-hmm.
explanations, you know, because they don't really have analytical thinking at that time. Some do, but it's rare. But when they're 4 years old, they want to talk about toys and, you know, food and cartoon characters and animals. And they don't want to know that this note is called that because it is there. You have
Mm-hmm.
to keep it short and keep it attractive. The most important structure in the Suzuki method is the teacher parent student triangle,
Mm-hmm.
where the parent is involved with the teacher and the student and they help each other. They're a team. I mean, that's kind of ideal for any early childhood student,
Agree.
but in Suzuki method, it's amplified. It
Mm-hmm.
originated in Japan in the 60s, I believe, and there the culture is more conducive to this kind of relationship. And I can see that here it's a little bit different because the culture is quite different.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to make it work. The parent would take notes in the lesson and do the same things the child does. Not everybody can do that, but we try. And at home, the parent is the teacher. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the most important things about the Suzuki philosophy is that triangle, that three-way support.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So making a culture, making a
Yes,
culture.
it's a culture. And also the next very important point is that music becomes a language that you speak at home. So you have to do it constantly and becomes a normal part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
For example, you don't give your kid a choice whether to brush their teeth or not. At this time, they go and brush their teeth. Or now it's story time, or now it's dinner time. Well, now it's music time, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's introduced in the routine as a natural thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that when I was reading about Suzuki method, uh, because I wanted to learn more. I found those interesting advices, like if you're not into playing that day, spend at least 5 minutes with your instrument. Of course, with your kid, your kid, and an instrument. Just sitting, sometimes recording what you do, or like go through your previous records. Just spend a time, spending 5 or 10 minutes daily, even if you're not practicing, means a lot. So it's
Yeah.
like building a culture. It's like a family life. You're like inviting an instrument into your family life, your routine. It's becoming something you, as you said, just do without even thinking that you're doing.
Mhm.
Okay, that's what is happening with the little ones. But how are you teaching the adults, especially the beginners, adults who are beginners?
Well, the adults are very well prepared for the process of learning.
Mm-hmm.
So the good thing is that you don't need to explain to them how to sit still and how to listen because they are ready to take information.
Mm-hmm.
They have life experience, they know what they want for the most part, and that can be a good thing and not such a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but it's easier to teach them
Mm-hmm.
because they will take it from you and they won't resist the doing. Now, the hard part is that as adults, we are highly analytical and we have life experience, so we think we know things. And so we are less flexible. We're more rigid in how we perceive information. And our brains are incredibly fast because they already have so many established connections. Our body and our hands are often behind. So we think as adults, if we understand something, we can do it. But normally with adult learners, and I am one too, so I know there's a big gap. I understand how to do it, and I do it. So with adults, the biggest challenge is to close that gap between I understand and I do. Because I'm one of those people who I'm like, I understand. And I wish I had more I do this, not just understand it.
Natasha, this is like with any habit in our life. Like, I do understand what is the diet I should have, or what are the practices I need to, or like a self-care practices I need to have during the day. But once when I had to really build that skill, like really put them on my schedule and really do that, you don't resist. You do as many things you can just to distract yourself. This is a perfect intro into your teaching philosophy. I read about that on your website and I was really amazed. And I want to touch on that topic. So what you're actually saying is that anybody can teach, anybody can learn to play, and everybody are, first of all, welcome to start at the level where they are. What is actually happening from that point when you're coming, willing to start learning and building your skill? What are the stages you have to, how can I say, face in order to become a skillful player, piano player, guitar player, whatever?
Well, the first stage is culture shock and adaptation, of course.
Immigration. This is like immigration.
Immigration.
Okay.
You know, regardless of whether you're a young child or an adult, you always have some sort of idea, even if you have no idea. You don't know what to expect, or maybe you think you know, and then you come and you start, and it's not at all what you imagined. In most cases, it's like that. I can see. They come thinking one thing, and then it's nothing like what they imagined. And that's a shock to the system, and everyone deals with it their own way. Some grab onto it and say, yeah, and some say,
this is not for me. Actually, I don't want this.
Yeah, and sometimes they realize they don't want this. And, you know, not everyone is a good fit with their teacher as well. So that's the first couple months are a good way to tell if you're a good match, if you click. Like, how do you connect? How do you learn together? Can you work together? How well you understand each other? And not every student is a good fit, and I'm not a good fit for every student.
Fair enough.
That's the first stage, that securing that relationship. Then building a routine is also challenging. So, and again, I am talking about specifically learning to play an instrument, not general music education where you listen to a little bit of music, you do a bit of dancing, a bit of singing. Those things are not as focused and not as active. They're mostly passive learning. And I'm talking right now about the challenges of actual learning the skill of playing an instrument that takes consistent effort. That's key, consistent. Because the body will forget and the brain will forget. So you need to remind it every day. Every day. It's just like walking. What if you only chose to walk once a week? How good we would be at walking? I don't know. where it's like growing something from seed. If you water your plant only once a week, how likely is it to sprout? How likely is it to grow healthy? And how likely is it to bloom and have fruit? Process is similar. And so anyway, establishing the routine, some sort of routine, any routine is what happens at that first stage. And also understanding what challenges you're going to face. For young kids, mostly it's listening. And we don't do much playing in the first lessons with young kids. Maybe a little bit. Most of it is listening games. Like close your eyes and tell me what you hear, or repeat this to them. And watching game. What did I just do? Copycat. Do what I did. That kind of thing. Because that's mostly what we need. We need to be able to watch, and we need to be able to hear to learn. So developing listening skills. And I don't mean like perfect pitch or anything like that. Or listening to music, not so much, but just hearing what the other person said, paying attention, being able to focus that attention. Those are the biggest challenges at first. And then if you're a good fit with the student and they're learning to listen a little bit and repeat after you and learning to do it at home, then it all kind of builds a nice base for learning, nice foundation. And then it's hard. You're climbing that hill, and then they have a leap. So it's like nothing. You put your feet in the ground, there's nothing. You dig it up every day. Is there anything? Nope. And then one day there's a sprout. It's really exciting.
I loved your explanation of your teaching philosophy, because I told you this is like process of life. It's the same. You start where you are at the level or circumstances, situation where you are at, and you slow and steady, you move forward. And while you're doing that, sometimes it seems like you're stuck, or you are, it's sometimes pretty static. You think that it's like status quo, but you're building skills, slow and steady. And in one moment, it's just you're actually taking a leap, and sometimes even not knowing how did it happen, because you face a lot of inner and outer challenges during that process. But as you said, you need to be consistent. You need to, practice every day or do things every day in order to come to that point of having that leap. So I was really drawn to your teaching philosophy, and I love, because you especially emphasize the skills like, as you said, listening, focus, like paying attention, endurance, resilience, coordination, collaboration. Those are life skills. Right now we're coming to 2020, and this is phenomenal because we can use what we just said in the next question. I want to talk about 2020 and the huge challenge that we have, like coronavirus. Many people, in a sense, lost their way or were attacked by these new circumstances, and they start, withdrawing, they start losing, they start, switching the gears, which was tough for many people. But I want to hear what was like for you. And did anything of what you have experienced so far helped you in this new situation?
Well, I remember having a moment of anxiety and uncertainty, as many of us did. The moment the quarantine was announced in 2020, I emailed all the students and I said, we're going online until further notice. Let me know if there are any problems with this. And everyone said, okay. because nobody knew what to do, and we had to figure out these online lessons. And that was a pretty easy transition in the practical way, because you don't really need to prepare the space so much. You just need to prepare your device. And for all you know, I could be in my pajamas right now. Right? So that was the good thing. The challenge was so much screen started giving me migraines, so I had to take a week off in May 2020 just to rest my head and my voice, because I started losing my voice from trying to enunciate everything as I was speaking online. And at the time I did not have a very good microphone. This one that I have right now is much better, an external mic. And yeah, afterwards, some students decided that, especially younger ones, which I understand, decide that they just couldn't do online lessons because young kids have trouble sitting still in front of a screen, etc., etc. They need in-person engagement. But again, not everyone. Most of my students stuck with it, and I feel incredibly lucky because I saw the world being ruined for so many people and so many people being lost. And for me, I was, mentally ready for it, psychologically ready. I had spoken to my landlord saying, okay, what if I lose a big percentage of my work? What do I do? And he said, don't worry, we'll help each other out. You just do what you can. And that took a lot of the pressure off. And so I said the same thing to my students. We do what we can while this crisis is ongoing. And most people maintain their routine. Most students, most parents. I was really lucky. And for me, it was very stimulating in the way, which I had not expected. And so I started coming up with all these group online ideas. And I had a couple master classes with...
Please, don't go fast through this. I want you to share more about the things you did, virtual project you had during the last year.
Well, I had a master class with a guest guitarist from Russia, Ravshan Mamedkuliev, who you interviewed and who is absolutely fantastic as a person, as a player. And I thought, here's a chance for me to expose my kids to that. And so that happened, and they seemed to enjoy it. And then I did an inspirational talk with Matthew Hensley. He is a personality of huge dimensions. I don't know how else to put it. He is a classical guitarist, a teacher. He runs Austin Classical Guitar Society in Texas. And he's written books and he's done seminars on community leadership. So he knows a lot and he knows how to inspire. He certainly knows how to talk. And so I thought I'd do a little talk with him for my students, adults and children alike. And he did. And the topic was why we do music at this time, what's the meaning of it, and how music can help us in life in general. And there were many different opinions, but the thread through that conversation was that music relieves stress and it takes your focus away from things that bother you or make you tense. So it's relaxing, and it also helps other people. You can use it as an instrument, as a tool to help someone else feel better, not just yourself. And that was very powerful.
I spoke with you a few times, and pretty much more than 2 or 3 times you mentioned that there is one thing, one dream that is utopia, but the thing you would want to see one day in Canada, and that's a music public school.
Yes.
Why? Why?
Well, partly because of my culture,
Mm-hmm.
of my past in Russia, where music school is something that's just there if you want it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I took private lessons,
mm-hmm.
I love the idea of a public music school where you can come and sign up, and that has a curriculum and a community. And I just love that idea now. I feel like running a private studio is great in a way. You're the boss, but you also have to deal with everything by yourself. And I am not good at business. I am just not.
Like a lot
Even
of artistic
if I get
people.
Great advice from great people, amazing administrators, amazing business people have given me advice, I just can't process it. I'm not wired for that, but I am in the situation where I have to pay my student loan and
feed yourself,
have to be responsible for a lot of things. And working for a music school here means that they will take a cut of your salary, which is a normal model here because they have rental fees and other fees that they need to cover and administration fees. So they deal with that for you. So they take a percentage of your salary, but there are no medical benefits, for example. So I had weighed those two options and I thought, well, at least I won't get my salary cut. All right, I won't get medical benefits in any case. So I went with the lesser evil in this case. And again, my mindset, not being capitalist as much as I try, I would very much prefer to see a model that is government funded where teachers can focus on teaching.
Yeah.
And where teachers would be taken care of. And I understand that in our reality, it's not exactly possible. Especially now when you can see this
yes, I want to talk about
programs being cut. Or
yes, I want to talk about that. You said you just said that you wanted to see a public music school, and these days in British Columbia we are facing with budget cuts and the possibility that music won't be taught next or 2 years from now on in schools. And that was the thing that we all accepted with a lot of resistance. So I want at the end to mention that, like, what is actually happening, if you can explain in few words.
In very general terms, some school programs, some music programs may be cut due to insufficient funds. So the budget is being allocated elsewhere. I won't go into details, but elementary strings program and choir programs are in danger of being cut. And we just had a huge protest
last weekend.
And yes, and it actually had some sort of effect. So the finalizing of the budget had been postponed, which is great. And all of a sudden you can see how much music means to people here. And it's great because if it's not talked about, nobody really knows. And I don't think that school boards are against music per se. It's just, it's not viewed as an essential need. And
which I don't agree with. I personally don't agree with that. And it reminded me to the crisis we had in 90s in my country. I share that with you. In the 90s when we had like economical, political, like war. We had war, but it was a crisis in my country. And first thing they cut off were actually those extra artistic activities. And I think that was the one way of destroying not just the whole culture, but the mindset,
Yeah.
the expression, the sense of togetherness. Let's create, let's gather together, let's find that comfort and motivation. Everything was taken away.
It's a language you can speak that everyone will understand, even though nobody knows the words. I think, well, take 200 people from different countries, put them together, have them sing the same melody. They're already connected.
Yeah.
They don't need to explain anything. They don't need to prove who they are.
Mm-hmm.
They just can open their mouths, use their most natural instrument, and sing something together. And it's instant connection. I have felt that myself. Again, it has nothing to do with professional music learning
Mm-hmm.
or goal-oriented music learning. It's an essential instrument that we have as our voice. And then there are many, many levels of expanding on that. If you feel the need inside you to express more, you go and learn musical instrument. And again, there are many levels of teaching that. There's the public school music program, which is wonderful. Here in Russia, we don't have that. So in Russia, we don't have band, but we have that public music school, which is kind of similar. It's outsourced, but it's there for you to attend should you want to. And here, if we get rid of free music in music schools, of course, on the one hand, yay, more work for private teachers, on the one hand. From the capitalist point of view, it's wonderful. But you shouldn't have to pay so much money to learn a bit about music. Hence the conflict.
Yeah. I'm always reminded of the olden days. If you remember, we had tough lives. People were mostly farmers, so we were working hard on farms. And at the end of every day, we were gathering at one place. It was always around the fire. And that was the moment when we shared the stories, we sang, we danced, and or played some instrument. There was always someone from the tribe who knew how to play some instrument. I don't know, in every culture there is another one, but that was the moment when we first expressed what we went through during the day, shared our emotions, show our affections, said something about our inner state of being. So all the other circumstances were harsh, like they are today. There is a lot of violence and division, and it's like people feel that they lost their lives. But once you put them in that comfort zone, round zone, at the end of the day, they feel relief. They feel hope. And that's, for me, music in schools. My kid, when she goes to music classes, she's like, I need to know how to read and write. I need to to learn math. I have to do this project or that assignment. But once we are with Mrs. Johns in her school, she's like, we're just playing. We are free. We are free. And all of our school community adores those concerts and performances they make throughout the year. And we miss that. Like last year wasn't the same, not just because of Corona, but because we didn't have those moments that we, it's like a glue. It's like a glue. We became,
you're right. Yeah.
In those moments, we became a community. We became a tribe. We are like, this is our school. We belong here. Those moments when they clap and sing and dance. So we don't want to give up on that. It's not just a thing we do and just a thing we can put aside and come back. No. If you break community, you will need years to rebuild it. It's just we will be all disconnected. Natasha, thank you so much for being in my project.
And you're very welcome, and thank you for having me. And I feel like we could go for hours and hours. Could I just add one last thing?
Come on.
About teaching and about students, something very important that I don't want to go unsaid is that I think my students taught me to teach more than anyone. And especially those who stuck with me from when I was a student until now, and I see how they have grown. It's just, my brain does not compute what amazing people they have become and what challenging music they're tackling. And they see the value in it. I don't have to force them anymore. I'm still pushing them here and pushing them there, and a little kick, here and there. But they know they want to do it, professionally or not, that's irrelevant. And they're just amazing. I think a teacher without students like that is not a fulfilled teacher.
We need each other.
I am so lucky that the ones that stuck with me are now turning into beautiful personalities with music as part of who they are. And we can converse as equals and share opinions and share our life perceptions and speak philosophy. Like, I have a couple of students who would really like to speak about life and challenges and, every time we have a lesson. And it's great because music is not just plucking away at notes. It's it's engaging and living through life with all its beauty and ugliness.